Hello everybody, welcome back. In this video, I'll be showing you how to graph cosecant and secant. So let's jump right in. Alright, so let's try and graph y equals cosecant of x. Now on the bottom we have y equals sine of x, and cosecant equals, or cosecant of theta, I should say, equals 1 divided by sine of theta. Alright, now what about right here? Well, 1 divided by 1 is what? Well, it's 1. So we're still going to stay here. I'll just use x's this time to mark where we're staying, or where we're going to be. Now, what about at 1/2? Well, 1 divided by 1/2 is 2. So we're going to go up to about here. Now, what about 0? Well, 1 divided by 0 is undefined. So we're going to have a vertical asymptote here. And we also have 1/2 over here, because see, 1/2. And then we're going to have right here. So our graph is looking like this. And we're just going to go on forever. Now what's 1 divided by 0? It's undefined. Another vertical asymptote. And what about negative 1/2? Well, 1 divided by negative 1/2 is negative 2. So we're going to go down to about here. All right. Now, what is negative 1, or 1, what is 1 divided by negative 1? It's negative 1. And now, same deal, boom, boom, boom. All right, so now we have this. And then what's 1 divided by 0? It's undefined, so we're going to get another vertical asymptote here. Now again, 1/2, 1/2, 1. It's the same pattern as over here. So we're just going to draw the same line over here. Now let's sort of shine up this work a bit. All right, and here's our graph, and it's looking nicer. And just so that you know, this is like an approximate graph. None of these lines are exact or anything. So for example, this line right here is supposed to be this line but flipped over, but because my graph isn't that accurate, it looks like a totally different line. All right, let's move on to y equals secant of x. And I'm going to use green to represent cosine. Secant of theta equals 1 divided by cosine of theta. Again, we're at 1/2, like right here. And what is 1 divided by 1/2? Well, it's 2. 1 divided by 1 is 1. Divided by 1 is 1. So far we have this, and it's going to go on forever. And then what about 1 divided by 0? Well, 1 divided by 0 is undefined. So we get a vertical asymptote. 1 divided by 0, let's just do that all the points where the cosine graph goes through the x-axis. All right, now what's 1 divided by negative 1? Well, 1 divided by negative 1 is negative 1. So we're down here. And now what's 1 divided by negative 1/2? Well, it's negative 2. Now what's 1 divided by 1/2? Well, it's 2. 1 divided by 1 is 1. 1 divided by 2 is 1 divided by 1/2 is 2. So hopefully you're starting to get a feel for this and notice the pattern. All right, so again, same deal with 1 divided by negative 1/2 and 1 divided by negative 1. Lastly, 1 divided by 1/2 is 2, and so on. So this is our graph, and it's looking sort of rough. And I encourage you to pause the video if you just want to look at it and try to understand and see what we did. But here is our graph without that much messy work. All right, now here's our secant graph, and here's our cosecant graph. So, yeah. All right, now how would we graph y equals 2 cosecant of x? Well, cosecant equals 1 over sine of theta. So, let's just start by graphing y equals 2 sine of x. All right, so we have y equals 2 sine of x. Now, let's just graph our cosecant graph, because we're already at 2, so we have our amplitude, and our graph should look like something like this. And that's y equals 2 cosecant of x. So let's try and graph y equals secant of 2x. Well, in order to do this, let's start by graphing y equals cosine of 2x. So what's the period? The period equals 2 pi divided by b. And b is what's being multiplied by x, which is 2. So our period is 2 pi divided by 2, which just equals pi. So our period is pi. Alright, and so I've written down the tick marks of our period, except I've circled the part where we have one whole cycle. So let's go ahead and graph y equals cosine of 2x. Now we're going to get a vertical asymptote in all the places where the cosine graph passes through the x-axis. So that would be here, here, and here. Those are most of them, and then there would be one back here if this graph kept on going. So yeah. Okay, so here are our vertical asymptotes. And now let's do our secant graph. So we'd have go up like this, then we'd have it go down like this, go up like this. And here is our secant of 2x graph. So this is our secant of 2x graph. We could remove this orange line right here that's the cosine of 2x, but if you're showing your work, you leave it in. So this is our y equals secant of 2x graph. Let's try and graph y equals -3 times the cosecant of 1/2 times x. Well, first let's reference our basic sort of expression, which is a sine or a cosine or whatever you want to call it. A sine, a times the sine of b times x plus c plus d. Now the period is 2 pi divided by b. Now what's b? Well, b is being multiplied by x plus c, and 1/2 is being multiplied by x, so we don't have plus anything, so we can just assume it's plus 0, so we have 1/2 as b. So now we have, as our period, 2 pi divided by 1/2, which is 2 pi over 1 times 2 over 1, and then we get 4 pi over 1, or just 4 pi. So our period is 4 pi. Now I circled 4 pi just so that it's easier to know where it is. So right here is where we have one cycle. So now let's graph y equals -3 sine of x. Keeping in mind that our period is 4 pi. So first of all, what would sine look like? Well, sine would look like this. That would be one cycle of sine. Now what would negative sine look like? Well, we're going to flip it, so it's going to look like this. Now what would sine look like with an amplitude of 3 or -3? It would look like this. Just draw that. Alright, so we've graphed -3 sine of 1/2 x, because remember we were still keeping in mind that our period was 4 pi. So again, we've marked where one period is. We're just going to draw our cosecant graph. So it's going to look like this. But first, before we draw it, let's draw all of our vertical asymptotes. So I've drawn all of our vertical asymptotes, and now let's just draw our cosecant graph. Alright, so now I've drawn, I've graphed -3 times cosecant of 1/2 x. So this is what our -3 times cosecant of 1/2 x graph looks like, and I've erased the sine graph just so that you know exactly what the -3 times cosecant of 1/2 times x graph looks like. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell. If you dislike this video, please share it with some videos because they might find it helpful. But for now, goodbye.